For most of my life as a Muslim, I never thought there was a serious conflict between Adam and evolution. I simply assumed evolution was wrong because the Quran had already explained where human beings came from. Then I started asking a simple question. What question are Adam and evolution actually trying to answer? The answer is straightforward. They are both trying to explain the origin of humanity. And once I realized that, I began to see that these are not two complementary stories. They're two completing explanations. Today, I want to summarize both accounts as fairly as I can, separate what we know from what we do not, and ask one simple question. Which explanation better fits the evidence? Let's begin with the traditional Islamic account. For over 1,000 years, Muslims understood Adam as a real historical person specially created by God. The Quran repeatedly says Adam was created from clay or dust, that God fashioned him, breathed into him from his spirit, and commanded the angels to bow down before him. Adam was not born, he did not have parents, he did not descend from earlier animals, he was the very first human being. According to the traditional account, Eve was then created from Adam. Humanity descended from this first couple, and history unfolded from there. The Hadith literature adds further details. Adam is described as being 60 cubits tall, roughly 90 feet, according to common estimates, and humanity gradually decreased in height afterward. Noah is described in the Quran as preaching to his people for 950 years. Taken together, this presents a complete picture of human origins and early human history. It's miraculous from beginning to end. For a 7th century audience, this was not merely a symbolic lesson about God, it was an explanation of where people came from. Now compare that with the modern scientific explanation. Evolution does not begin with one specially created man. It begins with populations. Every generation differs slightly from the one before it because of inherited genetic variation. Over many thousands and millions of years, these small changes accumulate. Populations split. Species diverge. Natural selection, genetic drift, mutation, and other evolutionary processes shape those populations over time. Importantly, individuals do not evolve, populations evolve. That distinction changes everything. There's no moment where one ape suddenly gives birth to the first human. Instead, each generation resembles its parents, while the population changes gradually across immense spans of time. Modern humans share common ancestry with other apes. We did not evolve from modern chimpanzees. Rather, humans and chimpanzees share an earlier common ancestor that lived millions of years ago. Humans occupy one branch on the evolutionary tree, alongside every other living species. And evolution has not stopped. Human populations continue to evolve today, although often in subtle ways. Now notice something important. The disagreement is not over one miracle, it's over the entire framework. One explanation says humanity began with one miraculous man, formed directly from clay. The other says humanity emerged gradually from earlier populations. One says there was a first couple, the other says there was never a single first biological couple from whom every human being descended in the same way traditionally understood. One describes human history beginning thousands of years ago. The other places Homo sapiens hundreds of thousands of years into the past, with even deeper hominin ancestry extending millions of years. These are not different details within the same story, they're different stories. At this point, some Muslims respond by saying, God could have used evolution. That raises an interesting historical question. Is that how Muslims understood Adam before modern evolutionary biology? If you open classical Quran commentaries, traditional theology, and the Hadith literature, Adam is generally presented as a literal first man, specially created by God. The idea that Adam represented a population, or that humans existed before Adam, or that clay is primarily symbolic, or that evolution was God's method, has become much more common in the modern period as Muslims have tried to reconcile their scriptures with scientific discoveries. That does not automatically prove those reinterpretations are wrong, but it does raise an important question. Are these interpretations arising naturally from the original text, Or are they being shaped by evidence that emerged many centuries later? Let's briefly talk about Darwin. Charles Darwin did not discover genetics. He knew nothing about DNA. He did not know about mutations. He did not know how heredity actually worked. But he proposed two remarkably influential ideas. First, that species share common ancestry. Second, that natural selection can gradually shape populations over time. Modern biology has modified and expanded Darwin's work enormously. Genetics, molecular biology, developmental biology, and population genetics have transformed evolutionary science. Darwin was not the last word. He was the beginning of a scientific research program. Richard Dawkins later became one of evolution's most famous communicators. His gene-centered perspective has been enormously influential, although some evolutionary biologists argue that organisms, development, physiology, and multiple levels of biological organization deserve greater emphasis than genes alone. Scientists like Dennis Noble have criticized overly reductionist versions of evolutionary thinking and argue for a broader understanding of biological systems. But notice something important. These scientific debates occur within evolutionary biology. They are not arguments that humans were specially created from clay. They are discussions about how evolution works, not whether common descent happened. What about the clay itself? Sometimes people point out that the human body contains elements also found in soil. That's true. The elements that make up our bodies are found throughout the earth, but that is not evidence that a human body was literally sculpted from clay. Finding similar chemicals is very different from demonstrating a particular historical process. The scientific explanation for human anatomy comes from embryology, genetics, comparative anatomy, physiology, and the fossil record, not from the observation that Earth and humans share common elements. Then there are the extraordinary historical claims. Could a 90-foot human have lived only a few thousand years ago? Could people routinely live for centuries? Science can never prove that no miracle ever happened, but these claims would imply remarkable departures from what we know about human biology and would require extraordinary evidence. The traditional narrative asks us to accept those events as miracles. Evolutionary biology does not require them. So where does that leave us? For me, the biggest realization was not a fossil. It wasn't Darwin, it wasn't DNA. It was recognizing that Adam and evolution are trying to explain the same event. Both answer the question, where did humanity come from? One answer is that God specially created the first man from clay, and all humanity descends from him. The other is that humanity gradually emerged through evolutionary processes acting on populations over immense periods of time. Those are competing historical explanations. And if they are competing explanations, then the natural question is not which one is older. It is not which one is more comforting. It's not even which one has more followers. The question is simply which explanation better fits the evidence. I'd like to leave you with one concrete fact. Evolution does not predict that humanity began with one specially created man and one specially created woman. It predicts that humanity emerged from populations through gradual change over immense spans of time. That single idea captures the central tension between the traditional Islamic account and modern evolutionary biology. And perhaps the most interesting question of all is this. If modern evolutionary biology had never been discovered, would Muslims today still understand Adam exactly as Muslims understood him for over 1,000 years? Or would these newer reinterpretations ever have arisen in the first place? I'll let you think about that.